Well, hi, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me in my shop. It's 12. It's December. Yeah, that's 21st. Is it today or was yesterday the longest night of the year? I don't know. So, I'm going to continue doing capacitor changes. I'm going to continue to mess around with this substitution box and just see what I can discover. Now, yesterday, in the last video, I replaced the capacitor that's here now, and in the course of doing that I operated the radio briefly without any connection here, without any capacitor here at all. So this is the volume control, and the output from the volume control goes through this capacitor on its way over to the amplifier over here and eventually out of the speaker. The strange thing is with this capacitor missing, no opportunity for audio signals to reach the grid over here, we could still hear program material coming out of the speaker. Basically, there's a complete break in the audio circuit, and yet the radio was playing out of the speaker. How can that happen? So I've thought about this quite a bit since yesterday. And I have a theory. We're going to take a look at the theory here. I'm going to put up the schematic, and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so here's what my sort of the process of thinking that I've gone through. For there to be sound coming out of the speaker, there has to be a signal obviously getting to it, and the only way to it, I think, is from the grid. The signal would have to be on the grid. But how can that happen when this capacitor is missing? The audio is all through here. The only connection, excuse me, is through this capacitor. How can it possibly produce a signal on the grid? The answer is the tube itself is doing it. Now this is my theory, okay, so I could be wrong in this. But in this tube, this is a two-part tube or two-job tube. One job is it has some diodes in it. Excuse me again. One right here. There's another one here. This one's been thrown away. It's not being used. So it's just one diode being used. And it also has a triode amplifier in it. And you can see the grid connection, etc. These two functions could be in two separate tubes, and often were in the earliest of radios. But in this case, the tube manufacturers figured out they could put both these functions into one tube, and the radio designers loved it, and this is the kind of tube you find in every radio. Like this, a single tube doing two separate jobs. Now here's the thing, I got to do a little research here, but I think there's only one cathode in this tube. And the one cathode is providing the electrons, providing the electrons for both functions. Well, wouldn't it be the case that if you draw off electrons from the cathode, you don't actually draw them right off the cathode, you draw them off a pressurized field of electrons just on the surface or just outside of the cathode, but if you were to draw that down, surely that has an impact on the current flow through the tube, out the plate, and over to the grid here. So here we have the output of the radio part of the radio. Here it's a 455 RF signal here, but it's detected or rectified by the diode, and at that point the audio signal is apparent. Prior to that, the audio signal is not very apparent. It's very hard to extract it. But once the rectification has taken place, and it's occurring in this tube, that rectified signal is what's, I hate to use the word, but I will, tickling the cathode in the other part of the tube, the same cathode, and causing an effect, which is what is causing the signal to make it through this tube, not even bothering with the volume control. A small amount, I don't want to say leaking, a small amount is being produced. on the plate, which is getting over here, and we're hearing it. So that's my theory. Now, does this mean that this tube is bad? Like, does it have a worn out cathode? And with a worn out cathode, this effect gets stronger and stronger? What about all those radios that I've gone through where I turn the volume down to 0 and can still hear it coming out of the speaker? I've had a number of radios here that you cannot zero out the volume, and I've always attributed it to the volume control. I've never thought of it, that what we could be hearing when the volume is reduced to 0 is a sneaky signal getting right through the tube over to here, over to the output tube. That's my theory. I don't have any other explanation for how you can possibly get something happening on the grid here when this capacitor is missing. Okay, I'll leave it at that. There probably are other ideas, probably are other methods. I'm looking at this through the tone control, maybe even, because that gets to the grid. Maybe through the tone control. Maybe I'm full of it. Maybe if I worked the tone control, if I had done that before reinstalling the capacitor, you might have found that the volume goes up and down with the tone control. Another possibility. Okay, now we're going to pick, well, I got the schematic up here, let's pick a new capacitor to mess around with today. Often I would go for the big ones, the point ones. At this point, there's one here, and there's one here, and what else? Let's go back this way, and look at that guy there. No information about it. Okay, this isn't going to work out right. I'm not going to be able to pick one this way. We'll pick one from looking in the back of the radio. Okay, who looks like a good one to do? As I mentioned before, there's this great big one in here. That's electrolytic. I'm going to stay away from that one just now. Well, we could just kind of work our way back from the output tube. So we have a capacitor here, and we have one here. So this is probably the tone capacitor here. And this one, I believe this is a ground point. So it's connected to the output tube to ground. Probably I shouldn't guess. Let's take a look. So it's probably this one here, right between the plate and the cathode. And its job is to quell any harmonic signals that are coming out at very high frequency, maybe beyond our hearing even. And it's there to catch them. What happens if that's not working? Oops. I don't know, to be honest with you. It's a very small capacitor. It's not doing a lot. It's aimed, I guess, for the highest frequencies. Let's do that one. It's a 0.005. It's within range of my decade box and whatnot. Okay, that's the guy. We'll do this one next. I think it's pretty inconsequential. I need to cut it out. You wouldn't even know it's not there. I think. Well, as seems to be the case a lot in my shop, things aren't working out here. So there should be a capacitor going from pin 3 around to, I believe it was pin 8. There's no capacitor in that position here. There is a capacitor on pin 3. Pin 3 is the plate, and that's the capacitor, and it's attached to a terminal up here, which is clearly grounded to the chassis. So there's a capacitor from the plate going to the chassis. I don't think that's what's on the schematic. Let's just double check everything here before we flip to the get my super weak flashlight. So I'm looking for the key on the tube. I'm counting 1, 2, 3. There can be no question. This is connected to pin 3. There's another wire connected here. That wire goes up and is caught in this bundle knot and heads up to the top, it's almost certainly heading for the speaker. So up to a ground terminal, which I know you can't really see this in the camera, but it goes here, right to the ground, right to the chassis. Absolutely. Now we'll look at the schematic, and then I'll run away. Okay, my feet are already moving. So here we see a capacitor connected from the plate to the cathode, which is what you would expect. It's what I would expect. The objective of this is to kill any high frequency harmonics that might be coming out of these tubes. These tubes generate harmonics. Well, in my radio, instead of it being connected here, it's connected here. It's connected to the B minus, or the chassis. It's bypassing this stuff. Consequences of that? I don't know. I mean, it wasn't done by accident. It was done by a design. It was done as a design. 0.005. It looks like it could be a 0.005. It's hard to say looking at it. So when I encounter these kinds of things, the first thing I think is, Jim, you're just making a mistake somewhere. You're doing something stupid. You're looking at the wrong tube. You've got the pin count backwards. You haven't seen a wire. That's, if you look harder, you'll see it. There isn't two capacitors connected here. There's just the wire heading up to the speaker and this capacitor which goes to ground. I mean, there's just no option here for it to be anything other than what I think it is. So you know what that means? That means time to stop and have some coffee. Okay, why don't we cut this capacitor out, make sure about its size, test it, see what condition it's in. Then we'll put the substitute capacitor in with the substitute box, set it to the same size as this, operate the set, then we'll vary the size and eventually disconnect it entirely and see what we hear coming out of the speaker. My prediction? We'll never hear anything unusual while I'm doing this stuff. That's my prediction. Okay, so we're going to want to disconnect here. Now, I'm not playing the radio first because we've played it enough to know that I've never noticed anything I would call harmonics coming out of it. It's very hard, I think, to hear them because they are essentially musical in a sense. Okay, we'll leave a lot of wire here for fun's sake. What size are you? Size dirty. That's the size. The size is dirty. Careful, man. I'm going to rub the numbers right off. Not going to show up on that camera. Let's look with the other camera here. .005. So it's the size of capacitor that was specified. You know, as capacitors go, this one's pretty ugly. Oh, what is that? There's a hole. There's a hole in the capacitor here. Okay, anybody want to wager a guess as to how well this will test? I have to handicap you because this is pretty easy. This game's pretty easy. I mean, this has to test bad, doesn't it? Look at it. Let's find out. Okay. 50 volts. What do you say? Oh, it actually opened partly. You can't see this, but the eye is shaky. Well, maybe it's just from bad. There's a lot of wax on the wires here. It's not coming back. Okay, if I put 150 on it, you're not going to open at all. So not quite as bad as I thought, but definitely a bad actor. Now it's on a plate circuit. There's a lot of power there. A little bit leaking through this capacitor. I can't imagine it would disturb the radio at all. What would disturb it though is a lack of capacity. If there's no capacity in here, which is highly unlikely, how could that be the case? We're going to measure it with this instrument here, but because we know it's leaky, the measurement will be false. But let's do it anyway. Gotta allow opportunity for surprises to arise. And the winner is. So it thinks it's a 0.009,000, so that'd be a 0.009. 0.01. If it's a 0.01, it thinks it's much larger than it is. And that, I think, is what happens when the capacitor is leaky like this. These instruments are thrown off. Okay, that's right, we're going to hook up the box here. We're going to dial in the same size, which was 0.00. What was that? I can just read it off here again. 005. So I've got 005. That's that setting, and because I replaced all the capacitors, I know it's going to be accurate. Okay, we'll clip this in here, and the other we will clip on this piece of wire. Okay, so I think as far as the radio is concerned, if anything, it's got a better capacitor in there now than it had. So it should work better than it was. But again, I don't think better is particularly noticeable. Right, okay, hey, I left it plugged in. Okay, and switch is on. Setting is correct. Camera out of the way. Here we go. One of the things I've learned in life, that a little secret I use, is in order to understand something, a system, a complex system, one of the ways you can do that is to perturb the system and observe the result. And this can bring out all kinds of things. And I'm not thinking about technology, I'm thinking about human organizations. You work in a complicated place where there's 100 people, you know, their work is all meshing together in ways that are pretty hard to understand. Nobody really knows the whole story. Perturbing that kind of system can reveal a lot about what people are doing or not doing or all that kind of stuff. So I'm perturbing the radio here by changing the value of the capacitor and observing the result. Right now the result is nothing at all. What's going on here? You know, I think I've got the antenna turned off again. Let me run. I'm going to turn on the antenna before we do this. Okay, I was wrong. The antenna is connected. We're operating only on 80 volts though. That's probably why it's so quiet. See if I can find a less noisy station here.
Really, really great rap. Thanks. Alright, beautiful. Special. And witness Aquaman's last stand. I'm gonna kill Aquaman.
Full trouble?
We're the end of the bloodline. And talk to you again. This Christmas. Don't miss the most epic effect of the season. This world into me.
First thing I'll do is I will go bigger, 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 and we'll see what happens.
Godsmack. Vibes tour.
tone going down.
April 25th, OLG stage
Smaller.
at Ballsview Casino with special guest Bastion de Cruz.
Smaller.
An intimate evening of music and untold stories with Godsmack.
Smaller yet?
On sale now at Ticketmaster.
Can't hear any difference there.
Day starts now at Visions Electronics. And you'll find
Oh my
massive
gosh.
markdowns throughout the entire store.
That's unbelievable.
TVs, home audio, appliances and headphones, car audio to car starters, laptops.
This is much better.
And at Visions Electronics, you'll always pay the
Well,
lowest price.
0.02, 0.002,
0.005.
0.005.
Plus, you save even more when you pick up in store. And take up to 3 years to pay interest-free. Boxing Day starts now. See all the deals at visions.ca. Everyone knows how to drink and
Okay, I've got it. So what I'm noticing is at the specified size, the treble is suppressed quite a bit in the radio. Surprisingly so. So right now I've got it set to a smaller size, 1/5. It's supposed to be 0.005. I got 0.001 hooked up. Get lots of treble,
A message from the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police.
and I can still kill it with the tone control.
This holiday season at Freedom Mobile, get a nationwide unlimited
Tune
plan
a
on
little
our
bit here.
growing 5G network for just $34 a month for 24 months when you bring your own phone. So yeah, saving is part of the holiday spirit too. Conditions apply. Learn more at freedommobile.ca.
It's beginning to look a lot like Lexus. It's a December to remember at Don Valley North Lexus. Right now, get lease rates as low as 3.3% for 28 months on selected 2024 Lexus RX and NX models with security deposits applied. See DonValleyNorthLexus.com for details. A proud member of Wayne's Auto Group.
Tune in to Real Kipper and Bourne for Game Time presented by Bet365. Download the
So the tonal effects that my understanding of this capacitor is that its job is to control harmonics that are beyond the range of our hearing. We wouldn't even know are there. And especially, I suppose, oscillations that could break out. Maybe. I don't know about that. And so you prevent the oscillations from occurring. Sure seems to me a smaller capacitor there results in much better tone output. Don't know that I'm killing the bass at all. The bass is kind of disappearing because the treble's getting so much louder. Of course, this is a treble cut tone control, so the bass is always the same, supposedly. So if I turn this up, turn this down, you hardly tell the difference.
Donate online at carsforkids.ca. That's cars with a K. Pickup is quick and easy. You'll benefit a child and get a maximum tax credit.
donate to the
Okay, I was supposed to reveal something, but somewhere in the middle of it, I kind of forgot what what the revelation was supposed to be.
internet from Telmac.
This is dramatic because if you install the proper size capacitor, then you're going to limit the audio output of this receiver to you're going to lose a lot of high frequency sound, which actually sounds great. What would go wrong? What could go wrong? What if I remove the capacitor entirely? Well, it's pretty much switching it down to the bottom setting here. Let's try it.
For an ice cold Texas size Molson Canadian and your chance to win seats at the first All-Star game in Canada since 2012. Go from sizzling hot fajitas to sizzling hot pot handling.
So the set's running now without that capacitor.
All-Star game from Lone Star Texas Grill. Must be legal drinking age. No purchase necessary. Learn more at Lone Star.
Maybe things happen at... No, it shouldn't. This is the audio part. So tuning the radio should have no effect on the audio side of things.
Major Toronto housing funding announcement is expected this morning. The city is reportedly in line for nearly $500 million from the federal government's Housing Accelerator Fund.
The size that was in there.
Off-duty police officer and mall security guards get pepper spray during a smash and grab robbery at Scarborough.
Sounds
Town
way
Center.
better without the
thieves got
capacitor.
away.
Winter's coming.
Yes, but it's not bringing snow. We're looking at a pretty calm season. There will be no temporary ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war after Hamas says it's pulling out of negotiations and the United Nations Security Council prepares to vote on a resolution to end the war altogether.
The Maple Leafs are in Buffalo this evening to take on the Sabres, and Week 16 in the NFL kicks off from Los Angeles. Sports at 15. Coming off the worst trading day since September, Bay and Wall Streets are clawing back, and retail sales in October were up, especially for cars. Business at 26.
City News Time, 10:01.
It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Helena.
Oh, weather.
We're brought to you by Scotiabank. If you're eastbound on the 401, past the 427 through to the 400, alternately express and collectors, you'll find a few slowdowns here and there. As you head towards the 400 and the collectors, we did have a stalled vehicle in the right lane, but it's all gone. Eastbound 401 is slowing through the 412 towards Salem. Still busy through McCowan in the express, and then it's...
So all that traffic stuff used to be important to me when I lived in Toronto, but I don't live there anymore. I live about 100 miles or 100 kilometers north of Toronto in a relatively small town, specifically to get away from all that traffic nonsense. So, okay. So I'm certainly inclined to put a smaller capacitor in here, like a 0.001, maybe a 0.002. That's what's on the box right now. And the thing is, it's just possible that perhaps the tonal quality of the signal coming out of the IF, the thing we're listening to, the tonal quality of the IF is actually poor because alignment is not correct, and in fact the treble part of the signal is suppressed earlier in the radio. It's suppressed, and now by fooling around with this capacitor, I'm boosting it back up to normal, and I'm impressed. But really what's going on is it's actually suppressed earlier in the radio, and I'm compensating for it here by accident without realizing it. So if the radio were working properly, aligned, all the capacitors changed, the tone range that would be coming at this point in the radio would be much greater, it'd be much more treble. And I'd appreciate it being cut back with a 0.005. So maybe I'm being fooled at this point. The key thing is coffee. Okay, so I've installed a 0.001. That's 1/5 the size of the capacitor that was actually in there, and based on my experiments with the substitution box. And now operate the radio and see if anything is untoward about it. Okay. Oh, okay. So tone is up all the way. Switch is on. Here we go. Now that particular capacitor I put in there is going to sustain B+ across it. So I put a strong capacitor in there, a 600 volt capacitor. Some of the other capacitors I've installed here are lower voltage capacitors because their duty is lower voltage. So, okay, we can give it the full shot here.
It's past every hour. City News 680.
City News Time, 10:26.
Hey, it's time for the business report, and let's head over to Ari Rabinovich. And Ari, you're looking at some retail sales numbers today. There was from one particular area so far. Yeah, it looks like car sales in particular, Steve, and kind of in a broad range, but it looks like with new car sales as well as parts, but also used car sales as well and gas sales all contributed to a higher than expected total figure. This is for the month of October, with retail sales out from Statistics Canada pointing to a gain of close to 1%, about 0.7% actually. November's early estimate is pointing to a flat reading though, so it looks like maybe the foot is beat.
Let me show you what 0.7% looks like. Okay, here's 100%. There's an additional 0.7%. Did you see it? No. Sometimes I'm stunned at such a small variation, and people come out and say, you know, things are increasing. Yeah, it's gone up 1% last month. Well, like 1%? Really? That's within the range of error of the measurements that are being taken. I think you need a good 10% before you even talk about it. Okay,
To be, oh, absolutely.
let's try a few more stations here.
In fact, I'm living paycheck to paycheck now. And you know what's more sad, though, Alex, that I notice a lot more lately is going into grocery stores or Walmarts or whatever, is I see elderly people that should not even be working. I've seen elderly people that their body
Low expectations point flowing economy. So the Canadian dollar is up 0.3%, close to a 4-month high at 75.10 cents US.
75 cents. Few years ago, our dollar got up to $1.05 or $1.10 or something. Quite a few years ago now. When I was a kid, the Canadian dollar was fixed against the American dollar at $1.06, and the Canadian government used its money to fix the price at 106 pennies. Don't know why.
We've got you with 6 free cookies. If no gift card, only at Subway. Offer.
There's no way. Life in the United States is much more efficient than life here in Canada because there's so many more people in the United States and a few other key factors, like a good portion of the United States has no winter. They don't have to heat their homes, or it's not a serious endeavor. Up here, chopping the wood. This radio is working great. This radio is working great. That's terrible because I'm trying to fix it. and there's only room for going downhill, it seems, although I think I fixed the tone quality of it by doing this capacitor thing. Now later on we might discover that in fact I'm right about the earlier stages of the radio suppressing the treble part of the signal, and then me compensating for it in the audio stages with this, unnecessarily or unwise small capacitor. Well, in thinking about that, the tone control beats off, so I can tone control out if there's too much treble after I align the radio, which I don't think is going to happen, but if it did, there's only so much treble in the radio signal, and then they cut it off, so 5 kilohertz, I think. No more than that. Okay, that's it for today. Now one more capacitor done. I'm getting a kick out of using this capacitor box, and it's helping me explore this whole radio world that much better. It's a simple thing. Wish I'd thought of it 10 years ago. Thanks a lot for watching. See you on the next video.